Hello, this is the first in a series of recordings for anatomy of the reproductive tract focusing on the pelvis. There's another region called the perineum which we'll focus on in another set of lectures. Here are the objectives for all of the pelvis, and we'll focus on bones, joints, ligaments, and muscles first of all. Alright, so starting with the bones, focusing on the figure on the left first. Red star is the ilium, green star is the pubis, blue star is the ischium. Bring those all together, and that's how you get the hip bone. Highlighted in the red circle is the acetabulum. On the right side, all those stars are different regions of the pelvis that I need you to know. Alright, so you can go back to your bone labs, or you can go back to figures in ECA to figure out all of those different regions. Alright, just a quick overview of some of the highlights. We have a greater pelvis and a lesser pelvis. The greater pelvis is actually called the false pelvis because it's not actually part of the pelvis region. That part of the bone is actually part of the abdomen, so it's false pelvis. The pelvic brim, highlighted by the dotted lines, is the entrance or the pelvic inlet into the pelvic region. Everything below that pelvic brim is the true pelvis, where the pelvic organs are found. And then below the pelvic outlet, which is highlighted by the red line on the right, is now perineum. Alright, so again, all those stars, red stars, are different regions that you need to know and review from the bone labs. Joints and ligaments. Major joints. Purple line represents the lumbosacral joint. Blue line represents the sacroiliac joint from the sacrum to the ilium, and the green is the pubic symphysis. All right. There are a number of important ligaments that are holding those joints together. Starting first with the red stars. Red star on the left is the anterior sacroiliac ligament. Red star on the right, lower figure, is the posterior sacroiliac ligament, and they're holding that sacroiliac joint together. Very strong ligaments. Two stars on the bottom right figure, 3.3. First of all, the superiormost star is the sacrospinous ligament because it's going from the sacrum to the ischial spine, and then we have the sacrotuberous ligament from the sacrum to the ischial tuberosity. Those two are, again, two strong ligaments holding the sacrum and the pelvis together. Important thing to note about those, the sacrospinous and sacrotuberous ligament, is that they are changing the greater sciatic notch and the lesser sciatic notches to foramens. Okay, so you have the red arrows pointing to the greater sciatic foramen, and then the black arrows pointing to the lesser sciatic foramen. And you can see how those two ligaments are creating those two holes, which used to just be notches. And this is just highlighting some of that information again. Alright, muscles. Three different muscles: obturator internus, piriformis, and levator ani. We'll talk about each in turn. Go to ECA to see the table that refers to the origin, insertion, action of these muscles. Focusing and don't focus on the innervation. It's really not that critical. But what I want to focus on are the relationships of these different muscles. Obturator internus first is a muscle that's sitting over the obturator foramen, and at the very superior top aspect, you see there's a tiny hole highlighted by the blue circle. That's the obturator canal, and the obturator vein, artery, and nerve are passing through that canal to get to the medial thigh. There's a pudendal canal, which is highlighted by the green circle. The pudendal vein, artery, and nerve are passing through that canal on the inferior aspect of the obturator internus, and that vein, artery, and nerve is important for perineal structures. Okay, but you can see how there's that little canal over top of the obturator internus. And then the other important thing is that the obturator internus muscle is actually exiting the pelvis through the lesser sciatic foramen to insert onto the greater trochanter of the femur. So that red circle is highlighting that exit point. So that's the obturator internus. Piriformis muscle. Piriformis muscle is a muscle highlighted in the figure on the left by that sort of red trapezoid structure. And so its origin is along the lateral aspect of the sacrum, and then it's going to exit the greater sciatic foramen, which is one of the important relationships, so that it can insert onto the greater trochanter of the femur. All right. So that's one important relationship, is how it exits the pelvis through that greater sciatic foramen. And the other important relationship is that the roots of the sacral plexus, which you can see on the left side there, are lying right on top of the piriformis, which will then form the sciatic nerve, which exits through the greater sciatic foramen as well. All right, so those are the important relationships of the piriformis muscle. And finally, the levator ani muscle. The levator ani muscle is also called the pelvic diaphragm because it sort of forms this bowl-shaped floor of the pelvis itself. So it's a group of muscles that form the floor of the pelvis. The most important is the highlighted in red. That's the puborectalis muscle, which we talked about in the GI module. Okay, so I want you to know everything about that muscle. The other three muscles, as long as you know that they make up the levator ani as a group of muscles, that's all you need to know. So puborectalis is highlighted by the red, and you remember that it's sort of a sling that wraps around the rectum and controls continence. The function of the levator ani in general as a pelvic diaphragm is to support the floor of the pelvis, to support the pelvic viscera inside the pelvis, and to keep them in place. Looking at it from the inferior side of the pelvis, so we're looking at the bottom now, it just gives you a different orientation. Again, puborectalis highlighted in red is the most important. All right, so those are the bones, the ligaments, and the muscles of the pelvis.